Lee Min-ho sat in the quiet archive room, surrounded by screens showing old records from 300 years ago. The blue light from the displays made his tired eyes hurt, but he could not stop reading. Every document told the same terrible story. Humanity had been betrayed. The young historian touched the screen, pulling up the trial records. He watched the grainy footage of human ambassadors standing before the Galactic Council. They looked so desperate, so helpless. Behind them, the Quarian representatives stood tall and confident, their scaled faces showing no emotion. The humans committed genocide, the Quarian prosecutor said in the recording. His voice was calm and cold. They destroyed the Velthon colony on Theta 9. 40 million innocent lives. We have proof. Lee Min-ho had seen that proof. He had spent months analyzing every piece of evidence. It was all fake. The energy signatures were wrong. The timeline did not match. Even the supposed human ships in the attack had registration numbers that did not exist in any human database. The Quarians had created everything. They had lied to the entire galaxy. But 300 years ago, nobody listened to humanity's defense. The Quarian Empire was too powerful. They controlled the largest military fleet in known space. 57 species depended on Quarian protection. When the Quarians said humans were dangerous, the Council believed them. When humans showed their evidence, the Council ignored it. Lee Min-ho closed the trial footage and opened another file. This one showed the evacuation. 40 billion humans fleeing their homes in a desperate exodus. Ships of every size and shape filled the screens. Military vessels, colony transports, mining barges, even personal yachts. Anything that could fly and carry people was pressed into service. The historian heard footsteps behind him. Captain Park Soo-jin entered the archive room, her military uniform crisp and clean despite the late hour. "Still studying the old wounds?" Park asked. Her voice was gentle but tired. She understood his obsession. Her grandmother had died during the Exodus, crushed in a stampede when too many people tried to board a transport ship. "Someone has to remember the truth," Lee Min-ho said. He gestured at the screens. "The galaxy thinks we died. They think the exile killed us. But we survived. We built something amazing. And they need to know what really happened." Park pulled up a chair and sat beside him. She looked at the evacuation footage, and her jaw tightened. "My grandmother was on that station," she said, pointing at one of the screens. "She was trying to reach the transport docks when the crush happened. She saved 3 children by lifting them over her head before she fell." Lee Min-ho reached over and squeezed her hand. They sat in silence for a moment, watching the chaos of humanity's darkest day. "The Council gave us 72 hours to leave known space," Park continued. Her voice was bitter now. 72 hours to abandon colonies we had built over centuries, to leave behind everything we had created. And where were we supposed to go? They did not care. They just wanted us gone. Close. 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 Lee Min-ho pulled up another file. This one showed a star map. A young human captain appeared on screen, her face dirty and exhausted. She was broadcasting to the Exodus fleet. "All ships, this is Captain Chen of the Advanced Scout Group," the woman said. "We have found something. Coordinates are being transmitted now. There is a massive nebula at the galactic edge. Our sensors cannot penetrate it. Neither can anyone else's. If we go in there, they will never find us." "The Shroud Nebula," Lee Min-ho said softly. "Our salvation," Park nodded. "And our prison. For 300 years. The footage continued. The massive human fleet approached the nebula. It stretched across space, like a purple and blue wall of gas and dust and energy. It was beautiful and terrifying. Inside that cloud, sensors did not work. Communication was difficult. Navigation was nearly impossible. It was a death trap, or it was a new beginning. "Elder Counselor Choi was there," Park said, pointing at another ship in the formation. He watched his homeworld disappear behind them as the fleet entered the nebula. He told me once that he cried for 3 days straight. Lee Min-ho switched to more recent files. These showed what humanity had built inside the Shroud Nebula. 47 star systems now held human colonies. Over 200 stations orbited various worlds and asteroids. The population had grown from 40 billion to more than 60 billion. Humanity had not just survived. They had thrived. But they had also changed. Isolated from the galaxy, forced to adapt to the nebula's strange conditions, humanity had developed technology unlike anything the Council species used. Phase shift drives that moved ships without using hyperspace. Gravitational manipulation systems that could build stations in impossible locations. Quantum-anchored communications that worked even through the densest nebula clouds. The Commonwealth of Free Worlds governed it all. Every human colony had a voice. Every station sent representatives. Democracy had replaced the old corporate federations and nation-states. Shared suffering had united humanity in ways that peace never could. An alarm suddenly beeped on Lee Min-ho's console. He frowned and pulled up the alert. His eyes went wide. "Park, you need to see this," he said urgently. The captain leaned forward, reading the message. Her face went pale. "A Quarian scout ship," she whispered. "It breached the nebula's outer edge. Our patrol captured it 3 hours ago." Lee Min-ho felt his heart racing. Do they know? Did the scout send any messages before we caught it? Park was already pulling up more information on her personal tablet. She read quickly, her expression growing more concerned with each passing second. "The pilot is alive. He is in detention on Station 17. The ship had an emergency beacon. It activated automatically when the ship entered distress." She looked up at Lee Min-ho, and he saw fear in her eyes. "The beacon broadcast for 47 minutes before we could shut it down." "Then they know," Lee Min-ho said. His voice was hollow. "After 300 years of hiding, the Quarians know. We are here." Park stood abruptly. "I need to inform the Council immediately. This changes everything." Lee Min-ho watched her leave, then turned back to his screens. The trial footage was still playing on loop. The Quarian prosecutor's cold voice echoed through the archive room. Humanity had been forgotten by the galaxy. Exiled to die in the void. But they had survived. They had built an empire in the darkness, hidden from the eyes of those who had betrayed them. Now the secret was out. And soon, very soon, the galaxy would learn the truth. Humanity had not died in the Shroud Nebula. They had been reborn. The Commonwealth Council chamber was packed with representatives from all 47 human systems. Lee Min-ho stood in the observer gallery, watching as the debate raged below. Captain Park Soo-jin sat at the military advisor's table, her face calm, but her hands gripping the edge of the desk tightly. Elder Counselor Choi spoke first. He was 93 years old now, but his voice still carried strength and anger across the chamber. "They exiled us. They called us murderers. They took everything from us." The old man's hands shook as he pointed at the display, showing the captured Quarian scout ship. "Now one of them stumbles into our home, and we debate what to do? The answer is simple. We remain hidden. We let them wonder. And if they come looking, we defend what we have built." Several counselors nodded in agreement. Lee Min-ho understood their fear. For 300 years, safety had meant invisibility. The nebula protected humanity because nobody knew they were there. But another voice rose from the chamber floor. Kim Da-yoon, a young diplomatic corps officer, stepped forward to speak. She was only 30 years old, part of the generation born inside the nebula. To her, the exile was history, not memory. "With respect, Elder Counselor, hiding is no longer an option," Kim said. Her voice was steady and clear. "The Quarian beacon broadcast our location for 47 minutes. Even if we destroy every trace of that ship, questions will be asked. A Quarian military vessel entered the nebula and never came out. They will investigate. Then we destroy their investigation fleet too, another counselor shouted. Kim shook her head. And then another fleet comes. And another. How long can we fight before they bring enough ships to overwhelm us? How long before our home becomes a battlefield? Park Soo-jin stood. The chamber fell quiet. Everyone respected the captain. She had commanded the outer defense forces for 10 years. Kim is right, Park said. But so is Elder Choi. We are not ready for open war with the Korean Empire. They command thousands of warships. We have built a strong defense fleet, yes, but we number in the hundreds, not thousands. Then what do you suggest, Captain? Someone asked. Park turned to look at Lee Min-ho in the gallery. Their eyes met, and he saw her make a decision. We tell the truth, Park said simply. Not to the Koreans, to everyone else. We broadcast what really happened 300 years ago. We show the galaxy the evidence of the Korean conspiracy. We let the other species judge for themselves. The chamber erupted in noise. Some counselors shouted in approval. Others argued against it. Elder Choi rose from his seat, his face dark with anger. You want to trust them? He shouted. The same council that exiled us? The same species that stood by and let the Quarians lie? No. Park replied calmly. I do not trust them. But I believe in the power of truth. And I believe that some species in the council will listen. The Quarians have grown more aggressive over the centuries. We know this from the intelligence we have gathered. They have bullied smaller species. They have taken resources by force. How many others are tired of their tyranny? Lee Min-ho felt his heart racing. This was the moment he had worked toward for years. He had gathered the evidence. He had documented every lie. If the council gave the word, he would finally get to show the galaxy what humanity had discovered. Kim Da-eun spoke again. I have studied the current galactic political situation. 23 species have filed complaints against the Korean Empire in the last 50 years alone. Trade disputes, border conflicts, unexplained military actions. The Quarians have made enemies. We could find allies. Or we could paint a target on ourselves, Elder Choi said, but his voice was quieter now. He sat down slowly, suddenly looking very old and very tired. The vote was called. It was close. 24 systems voted to reveal humanity's existence. 21 voted to remain hidden. 2 abstained. The decision was made. Humanity would emerge from the shadows. After the vote, Lee Min-ho went to the detention facility on Station 17. He had requested permission to interview the Quarian pilot. The guards led him to a comfortable room where the alien sat, looking confused and frightened. Dex Kovar was young for a Quarian. His scales were still bright green, not yet faded by age. When Lee Min-ho entered, the pilot stood quickly, his body tense. I am not here to hurt you, Lee Min-ho said gently. He sat down and gestured for the Quarian to do the same. I just want to talk. Dex Kovar sat slowly, his eyes never leaving Lee Min-ho. You are human, he said, his voice full of disbelief. But humans died out. Everyone knows this. You went into the nebula 300 years ago and never came out. We came out, Lee Min-ho said. We just did not leave. We built a new home inside. Tell me, what do your people teach about why humanity was exiled? The Quarian looked uncomfortable. You committed genocide. You destroyed the Velthon colony. Killed millions. The council had no choice but to remove you from civilized space. Lee Min-ho pulled out a tablet and placed it on the table between them. He began showing files, evidence, analysis, proof of the conspiracy. Your empire lied, Lee Min-ho said quietly. We never attacked the Velthon. The Quarians did. They framed us because they wanted to remove humanity as a potential rival. We were growing too fast, building too many colonies. Your leaders saw us as a threat. Dex Kovar stared at the evidence, his face cycling through emotions. Confusion, disbelief, doubt. Then, slowly, something that might have been horror. "I am a scout pilot," he said weakly. "I just fly my ship. I follow orders. I did not know." "Most of your people probably do not know," Lee Min-ho agreed. "But your leaders do. And now, we are going to tell everyone else." Meanwhile, in the military command center, Park Soo-jin reviewed the fleet readiness reports. 50 ships from across all human systems were being assembled. Not a war fleet, but a diplomatic mission, big enough to defend itself, but clearly not an invasion force. Her second officer approached. "Captain, the engineers say it will take 2 weeks to prepare the phase shift drives for coordinated emergence. We have never tried to have 50 ships exit the nebula simultaneously at different locations." "We have 2 weeks then," Park said. "I want every ship checked 3 times. No mistakes. When we reveal ourselves to the galaxy, we need to show strength and confidence." "And if the Quarians attack?" the officer asked. Park smiled grimly. "Then they will learn what 300 years of isolation has taught us. We are not the helpless refugees they exiled. We are something new. Something stronger." Across the Commonwealth, preparations began. Lee Min-ho worked with a team of historians and technical experts to compile the evidence package. It had to be perfect, clear enough for any species to understand, backed by irrefutable proof. Kim Da-eun contacted her intelligence network, gathering information on every species in the council. Who might be sympathetic? Who were the Quarians' strongest allies? Who could be convinced to listen? Elder Choi watched it all from his quarters on the archive ship. He had voted against revelation, but now that the decision was made, he would support it. That was how democracy worked, but deep inside, he was afraid. He remembered the exodus, the terror, the loss, and he feared that humanity was about to face that darkness again. 2 weeks passed quickly. The 50 ships of the First Contact Fleet gathered at the nebula's edge. Each one carried part of humanity's message. Each one would emerge in a different location near Council space. Park stood on the bridge of the flagship. Lee Min-ho was beside her, carrying the master copy of the evidence. Kim Da-eun coordinated with the other ships, ensuring everyone was ready. "All ships report ready," Kim said. Park took a deep breath. "Then let us show the galaxy that humanity never died. Begin phase shift. It is time to come home." The broadcast began at exactly the same moment across 50 locations. Human ships emerged from phase shift near major trade routes, communication hubs, and council stations. Every ship immediately transmitted the same message on all known frequencies, in every recognized galactic language. Lee Min-ho stood in the broadcast chamber, speaking into the camera. His voice was calm, but his hands trembled slightly as he held his notes. 300 years ago, humanity was exiled from known space, he began. The Galactic Council declared us too dangerous to exist among civilized species. They said we committed genocide. They said we destroyed an entire colony world. They said we were monsters. He paused, letting the words sink in across thousands of worlds. They lied. Behind him, screens began showing documents. Evidence. Communication intercepts. Energy signature analysis. Everything humanity had gathered over 3 centuries of careful research. The Quarian Empire fabricated the entire case against humanity, Lee Min-ho continued. They destroyed the Velthan colony themselves and blamed us. They created false evidence. They pressured the council to act quickly, before anyone could verify their claims. Why? Because humanity was growing too powerful. Our colonies were thriving. Our technology was advancing. We were becoming rivals to Quarian dominance. On the bridge, Captain Park watched the communication boards light up with incoming signals. Some were demands that they stop broadcasting. Others were requests for more information. Many were simply confused questions. "Captain, we are receiving a direct message from the Quarian Military Command," her communications officer reported. "They are demanding we cease transmission immediately and return to the nebula." "Ignore it," Park said. Keep broadcasting. Lee Min-ho's broadcast continued. He showed the original trial footage, then presented the analysis proving the evidence was false. He showed communication records between Quarian military officials discussing the frame-up. He showed energy signatures from the destroyed colony that matched Quarian weapons, not human ones. We have lived in the Shroud Nebula for 3 centuries, Lee Min-ho said. We survived. We built a new civilization. We grew stronger. But we never forgot what was done to us. We never stopped searching for the truth. He looked directly into the camera, and his voice grew stronger. We are humanity. We are still here, and we demand that the galaxy hear the truth. The broadcast played on loop for 6 hours straight. By then, it had reached nearly every inhabited system in Council space. Reactions varied wildly. On the Raxian homeworld, a major trade power, the government immediately ordered an independent investigation. They had suffered under Quarian trade restrictions for decades. The possibility that the Quarians had lied about humanity made them question everything else. The Telquarian Empire, a close Quarian ally, dismissed the broadcast as human propaganda. Their leaders refused to even review the evidence, but other species were not so quick to dismiss humanity's claims. The scientific community, in particular, began analyzing the evidence package. Independent researchers from a dozen species started publishing their findings. The energy signatures were indeed wrong. The timeline did not match. The evidence against humanity had serious problems. Then something unexpected happened. A transmission came from the Velthon homeworld. The species that humanity had supposedly genocide 300 years ago. Their leader, an elderly being named HFY War, appeared on every major galactic channel. We are the Velthon, HFY War said, his voice heavy with old pain. 300 years ago, our colony on Theta 9 was destroyed. 40 million of our people died. The Galactic Council told us that humans were responsible. They told us justice had been served when humanity was exiled. The old Velthon's face grew harder. They lied to us too. We always had doubts. The evidence never felt complete. But we were grieving, and we wanted someone to blame. Now, humanity has shown us what really happened. Quarian ships destroyed our colony. Quarian weapons killed our people. And the Quarian Empire blamed another species to hide their crime. Kim Da-un, watching the Velthon broadcast from her station, felt tears in her eyes. She had not expected this. Nobody had. The Velthon people stand with humanity, HFY War declared. We demand a full council investigation. We demand accountability. And we demand that the galaxy recognize what was done to both our species. The Galactic Council went into emergency session. Species that had remained neutral suddenly had to choose sides. The Quarians tried to dismiss both the human and Velthon claims, but their denials sounded weak. Then the Council made a decision. They would send a peacekeeping force to the nebula's edge. They would investigate. They would hear humanity's full testimony. But the Quarian Empire was not willing to accept investigation. Admiral Zethix Moore, commander of the Quarian border fleets, received his orders directly from the Empress herself. The message was simple and brutal. Humanity cannot be allowed to destabilize the Empire. Their claims threaten our authority. Destroy them before this goes any further. 3 days after humanity's broadcast, Admiral Zethix Moore assembled his fleet. 200 warships. The most powerful military force in that region of space. His orders were clear. Jump to the nebula's edge. Deliver an ultimatum. If humanity refused to retreat back into the nebula and cease all communication, destroy them. On the human flagship, Park's sensors detected the Quarian fleet assembling. She watched the readings carefully, her tactical mind assessing the threat. They outnumber us almost 4 to 1, her tactical officer said nervously. Numbers are not everything, Park replied, but she felt the weight of command heavy on her shoulders. She had hoped for more time, hoped that the truth would be enough to prevent violence. She had been naive. All ships, Prepare for combat, Park ordered. Defensive formation. Protect the diplomatic vessels. And send a message to the Commonwealth. Tell them the Quarians are coming. Lee Min-ho stood beside her on the bridge. He had never been in combat before. The historian in him wanted to document everything. The human in him was simply terrified. Will we win? He asked quietly. Park looked at him. Our ships are more advanced. Our technology is better. But they have numbers and experience. This will not be easy. Kim Da-eun worked frantically at the communication station. She was sending messages to every species that had shown sympathy to humanity's cause. Some were responding. The Velthan were sending ships. A few smaller species were offering support. But it would take time for help to arrive. Time they might not have. The Quarian fleet jumped to the nebula's edge right on schedule. 200 massive warships appeared in formation, their weapons powered and ready. The human fleet of 50 ships looked tiny in comparison. Admiral Zethix Moore opened a channel. His scaled face appeared on every human ship's main screen. Humans of the Commonwealth, the Admiral said, his voice cold and formal. You have violated the terms of your exile. You have spread lies and propaganda against the Quarian Empire. You have exactly 1 hour to retreat back into the nebula and agree to permanent isolation. If you refuse, you will be destroyed. Park muted the channel and looked at her crew. Then she looked at Lee Min-ho and Kim Da-eun. This is it, she said quietly. This is the moment we find out if truth matters more than power. She unmuted the channel and faced the Quarian Admiral. Admiral Zethix Moore. We will not retreat. We will not be silent. The truth has been revealed, and nothing you do here can hide it again. If you attack us, the galaxy will see who truly deserves to be called monsters. The Admiral's face showed no emotion. You have made your choice. My conscience is clear. You brought this on yourselves. The channel closed. For a moment, space was silent. Two fleets facing each other across the void. Then the Quarians opened fire. The battle for humanity's future had begun. The first Quarian missiles streaked across space toward the human fleet. Admiral Zethix Moore watched from his flagship's bridge, confident in his overwhelming numerical advantage. He had fought many battles in his long career. This one would be short. He was wrong. Captain Park's hands moved across her command console. All ships, phase shift on my mark. Pattern Delta 7. The human fleet seemed to flicker and disappear. One moment they were in front of the Quarian formation. The next moment they were scattered in a dozen different locations, completely out of the Quarian firing solution. The missiles flew through empty space and detonated harmlessly. Admiral Zethix Moore blinked in confusion. What just happened? The human ships moved, sir, his tactical officer reported, studying the sensors frantically. But not through hyperspace. Our sensors show they simply changed position instantly. That is impossible, the Admiral said. Park smiled grimly on the human flagship bridge. Welcome to 300 years of technological evolution, she said softly. Then, louder. All ships, target their weapon systems. Gravitational pulse. Minimum power. Disable. Do not destroy. The human ships fired. But instead of energy beams or missiles, they released focused gravitational waves. The Quarians had never seen weapons like these. They had been developed to work in the nebula's intense gravity fields, where conventional weapons often failed. The gravitational pulses hit the Quarian ships, and their shields collapsed. Power systems flickered. Weapon batteries went offline. 20 Quarian warships were suddenly floating helpless in space, completely disabled, but with their crews unharmed. Impossible. Admiral Zethix Moore whispered again. Then, shouting, all remaining ships, spread formation. Target those human vessels. Fire everything. The Quarian fleet adjusted. 180 warships unleashed a massive barrage. Space lit up with energy beams and missile contrails. Surely no force could survive such an attack, but the human ships phase shifted again. They appeared behind the Quarian formation. They appeared above it. They appeared in the gaps between ships. They were everywhere and nowhere. Impossible to track. Impossible to hit. Lee Min-ho gripped his console tightly, fighting to keep his stomach under control. The phase shift felt strange, like reality was bending around them. "How are we doing this?" he asked. 300 years in the nebula taught us to think differently about space and movement, Park explained, even as she coordinated the fleet's next maneuver. The Quarians still rely on hyperspace technology, which has its limits. We learned to manipulate phase variance instead. It is slower than hyperspace for long distances. But in combat range, it makes us impossible to target. Another gravitational pulse disabled 15 more Quarian ships. Admiral Zethix Moore felt panic rising in his chest for the first time in decades. His mighty fleet was being picked apart by a force a quarter its size. Worse, the humans were not even trying to kill his crews. They were just disabling ships, leaving them floating helplessly in space. It was humiliating. "Send a distress signal to Quarian High Command," he ordered. "Tell them we need reinforcements. These humans are not what we expected." But Park had anticipated this. Human cyber warfare specialists, trained in the quantum-anchored systems developed in the nebula, had been quietly infiltrating Quarian communications since the battle began. "Captain, we have intercepted the Quarian distress call," Kim Da-eun reported. "Shall we jam it?" Park hesitated for just a moment. If she jammed the signal, the Quarians would know humans could breach their secure channels. But if she let it through, more Quarian ships would come. "Let it through," she decided. "But make sure everyone else hears it too. Broadcast it on open channels. Let the galaxy know the Quarians are losing to the primitive exiles they tried to destroy." Kim's fingers flew across her console. Seconds later, Admiral Zethix Moore's panicked distress call was being broadcast across dozens of star systems. The battle continued. The human fleet used the nebula itself as a weapon, luring Quarian ships close to its edge, where their sensors failed completely. Human ships, designed to operate in the nebula's conditions, had no such problems. They could see perfectly, while the Quarians flew blind. 30 more Quarian ships were disabled. Then something unexpected happened. New ships began arriving at the battlefield. But they were not Quarian reinforcements. The Velthon had sent their fleet. It was small, only 12 ships, but they positioned themselves alongside the humans. Sethis Vor's face appeared on Park's communication screen. "We owe humanity a debt 300 years old," the Velthon leader said. "Today, we begin to repay it. Our weapons are at your command, Captain." Park felt emotion welling up inside her but pushed it down. "Welcome, friends. Form up on our right flank. Watch for Quarian missile attacks." More ships arrived. The Raxian Trade Federation sent 20 vessels. The Mintharan Assembly sent 8. Small species that had suffered under Quarian dominance for decades saw their chance to strike back. Admiral Zethix Moore watched in horror as his numerical advantage evaporated. His fleet was down to 100 operational ships. The human-led coalition now numbered 90 vessels, and his ships were still being disabled one by one. "Admiral, we should retreat," his second officer urged. "We cannot win this battle." "Retreat?" Zethix Moore roared. "The Quarian military does not retreat. We are the most powerful force in the galaxy. These humans are nothing but refugees. We will not be defeated by them." His words cut off as the human flagship phase shifted directly in front of his own ship. The human vessel was smaller than his mighty warship, but somehow more threatening. Park opened a direct channel. "Admiral Zethix Moore, you have a choice. Order your remaining ships to power down and surrender, or we will disable them all. You cannot win. You know this now. Stop this before more beings die needlessly." The Admiral stared at her. His pride screamed at him to refuse. His training demanded he fight to the last ship, but his tactical mind knew the truth. He had lost. You are primitives, he said weakly. Park's expression was hard. You exiled us to die. Instead, we thrived. You left us alone in the darkness. We learned to see in it. You thought isolation would destroy us. It made us stronger. That is what humanity does, Admiral. We survive. We adapt. For a long moment, silence hung between them. Then Admiral Zethixmore slumped in his command chair. All Quarian ships, he said tiredly. Power down weapons. Prepare to be boarded and detained. The battle is over. Throughout the Quarian fleet, ships began shutting down their weapon systems. Some officers protested. A few tried to fight on, but most simply surrendered, exhausted and defeated. Lee Min-ho was broadcasting the entire battle. Every species in Council space could watch as the mighty Quarian military was beaten by the humans they had exiled. The historian in him knew this moment would change the galaxy forever. Kim Da-eun was already coordinating with the coalition forces, organizing the processing of Quarian prisoners and disabled ships. The diplomatic challenges were just beginning. Then her console beeped with a priority alert. She read it, and her face went pale. Captain, she said urgently. Our long-range sensors have detected massive movement in Quarian home space. Their main war fleet is mobilizing. Park looked at the reading. Her heart sank. 3,000 ships, the entire might of the Quarian Empire, preparing to move. They had won this battle. But the war was just beginning. On the archive ship, Elder Counselor Choi watched footage of the battle. He saw human ships dancing through space. He saw the coalition forming. He saw the Quarians surrender. And he wept. Not from sadness, from relief, from pride. Humanity had proven itself worthy. Not through conquest, not through cruelty, but through skill and determination, and the choice to disable rather than destroy. But as he wiped his eyes, he saw the same report Kim had seen. 3,000 Quarian warships, moving toward Commonwealth space. The old man stood slowly, his joints aching. He had voted against revelation. He had wanted to stay hidden. But humanity had chosen truth. Now they would pay the price. And he would stand with them, whatever came next. The galaxy was watching. The truth was revealed. And the Quarian Empire, faced with the collapse of its authority, was preparing for total war. 3 months passed after the battle at the nebula's edge. 3 months of frantic preparation. 3 months of diplomacy and alliance building. 3 months of watching the Quarian war fleet slowly gather its strength. Lee Min-ho stood in the Commonwealth War Council chamber, presenting his latest intelligence findings. Around him sat representatives from 30 species. What had started as a human defense had become something much larger. The Quarian Empress has staked everything on this assault, Lee Min-ho explained, displaying star charts and fleet movements. She cannot allow our revelation to stand. If the truth about the frame-up becomes accepted fact, her entire empire collapses. Species that have lived under Quarian dominance for centuries will rebel. Her only option is to destroy us so completely that our claims die with us. Kim Da-eun added her analysis. We have secured formal alliances with 17 species. Another 13 have sent ships to support the defense, though they will not commit to formal alliance. That gives us approximately 800 warships. Against 3,000, someone muttered. Against 3,000, Kim agreed. The numbers are not in our favor. But we have advantages the Quarians do not. Captain Park stood and activated the tactical display. It showed the nebula and the space around it. We will fight at the nebula's edge. It is our home territory. Our ships can phase shift into the nebula and back out. Quarian ships cannot follow without becoming hopelessly lost. We can use it for cover, for surprise attacks, for retreat if necessary. You are talking about guerrilla warfare, the Raxian ambassador said. I am talking about survival, Park replied. Elder Counselor Choi spoke from his seat. His voice was weak now. The stress of the past months had taken its toll on the old man's health. And if we lose? What then? Lest. What? What? The chamber fell silent. Lee Min-ho was the one who answered. Then we lose. But the truth is already out there. Even if every human dies, the galaxy knows what the Quarians did. Other species will carry on our fight. That is why we had to reveal ourselves, Elder. Not just to survive, but to ensure the truth survives. Choi nodded slowly. I understand now. I was wrong to vote for silence. Sometimes, the only way forward is through the fire. Preparations intensified. Human engineers worked with allied species to share technology. Phase shift drives were too complex to install on other ships quickly. But gravitational weapons could be adapted. Sensor systems were upgraded across the coalition fleet. Kim Da-eun spent every waking hour on diplomatic channels. She was building something unprecedented. A true coalition against tyranny. Species that had never worked together were training their crews side by side. Ancient rivals were setting aside disputes to face a common enemy. Meanwhile, Lee Min-ho made one final discovery. His cyber warfare team, hacking deep into Quarian secure networks, found something extraordinary. Captain Park, you need to see this, he said urgently, bursting into her ready room. Park looked up from fleet readiness reports. She was exhausted, but Lee Min-ho's excitement cut through her fatigue. We found the Empress's personal archives, Lee Min-ho explained, pulling up files on the room's display. Communications from 300 years ago. She was not Empress then, but she was a high-ranking military commander, and she personally ordered the destruction of the Velthon colony. She personally created the frame-up against humanity. Park's eyes widened. Can you prove it? Every communication is authenticated with her personal encryption key. It is absolutely genuine. Lee Min-ho smiled grimly. The Empress herself ordered the genocide, then blamed us. Empress, this is not just some conspiracy by lower officials. It goes to the very top. Can we broadcast this? Park asked. Already prepared, Lee Min-ho said. Waiting for your order. Park thought for only a moment. Do it. Right now. Before the battle begins. Let every Quarian officer and crew member know exactly who they are fighting for. The broadcast went out across all channels. Lee Min-ho narrated again. But this time, he presented the Empress's own words. Her orders to destroy the Velthon colony. Her instructions on how to fabricate evidence against humanity. Her concerns about human expansion threatening Quarian dominance. 300 years of lies, exposed in her own voice. The effect was immediate and devastating. In the Quarian fleet, officers began questioning their orders. Some refused to continue. Entire ships broke formation and retreated back to Quarian space. The crews were not willing to fight and die to protect their Empress's crimes, but the majority remained. 3,000 ships became 2,400, still an overwhelming force, and their commanders were the most loyal, the most committed to the Empire, regardless of its sins. They jumped to the nebula's edge on schedule. The Battle of the Shroud began. From the start, it was chaos. The Quarians came in massive formations, trying to overwhelm the coalition through sheer numbers. But the coalition did not fight like a traditional fleet. Human ships phase shifted in and out of the nebula, appearing behind Quarian lines, disabling ships, then vanishing before the Quarians could respond. Velthon ships used their own unique technology, quantum anchor missiles that could track targets through dimensional shifts. Raxian vessels formed defensive screens, their shields the strongest in the galaxy. Park commanded from the human flagship, coordinating hundreds of ships across a battle space that stretched for thousands of kilometers. Her tactical brilliance, developed through 3 centuries of theoretical study and simulation, finally had a real test. Group Delta, phase shift to coordinates 77 Alpha, she ordered. Group Epsilon, gravitational bombardment on the Quarian flagship cluster. Group Zeta, Screen the medical ships. Keep our casualties away from the fighting. Lee Min-ho broadcast the entire battle. Every species in the galaxy watched in real time as the coalition fought for its survival. He made sure they saw not just the combat, but the purpose. The coalition ships disabled when they could. They offered surrender. They rescued Quarian escape pods. Kim Da-eun worked diplomatic miracles even in the middle of battle. When a group of Quarian ships tried to surrender, she coordinated their safe passage through the battle lines. When Allied ships took damage, she arranged for their retreat to repair stations. The battle raged for 16 hours. Ship after ship was disabled or destroyed on both sides. The space around the nebula became a graveyard of metal and debris. Then the tide turned. The Telkorian Empire, the Quarians' strongest remaining ally, suddenly withdrew from the battle. Their commander broadcast an explanation across all channels. "We have reviewed the evidence against the Empress," the Telkorian admiral said. "We cannot fight to defend a proven war criminal. The Telkorian fleet is withdrawing. We urge other Quarian allies to do the same." 400 ships left the battlefield. The Quarian advantage evaporated. Aboard the Quarian command ship, the fleet admiral realized he had lost. His Empress had lied. His allies had abandoned him. And the coalition he faced was not a collection of weak species, but a united force fighting for justice. He ordered the retreat. The Quarian fleet jumped away, limping back to their home space. They left behind 600 disabled ships and thousands of detained crew members. The coalition had won, but at a terrible cost. 140 coalition ships were destroyed. Thousands had died. In the War Council chamber, exhausted representatives embraced and wept. They had survived. Against impossible odds, they had survived. But the aftermath was just beginning. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session. The evidence against the Empress was irrefutable. She was arrested and brought to trial. The Quarian Empire fractured as member states declared independence. 100 years of tyranny collapsed in weeks. A new Galactic Council formed. This one included humanity. It included the Velthon. It included all the species that had fought in the coalition. The age of Quarian dominance was over. 6 months after the battle, Lee Min-ho published his complete history. It became required reading across the galaxy. Young beings of every species studied how humanity had survived, how truth had defeated tyranny, how unity had overcome oppression. Captain Park accepted command of the new multi-species defense coalition. Her job was to ensure no species would ever dominate others again. She approached it with the same careful determination she had shown throughout the crisis. Kim Da-eun became humanity's first representative to the new Galactic Council. At 30 years old, she was the youngest counselor in history, but she had earned her place through skill and dedication. Elder Counselor Choi lived just long enough to see the new era begin. He died peacefully in his sleep aboard the archive ship, finally able to let go of the pain he had carried for so long. At his funeral, representatives from 40 species came to honor the man who had survived humanity's darkest day and lived to see its brightest. The Shroud Nebula opened its borders. Other species could enter now, share technology, build together. The secrets humanity had developed in isolation became gifts to the galaxy. 10 years passed. The nebula's edge became a symbol of unity rather than exile. Mixed species stations orbited the phenomenon. Joint research facilities studied the unique conditions that had forced humanity to innovate. Cultural centers celebrated the diversity of galactic civilization. Lee Min-ho was an old man now, though not as old as Choi had been. He sat in the same archive room where his journey began, updating his histories with new developments. A young Quarian student entered, nervous and respectful. "Historian Lee," she asked, "I am writing a paper on the exile. May I ask you a question?" Lee Min-ho smiled and gestured for her to sit. "Of course. How did humans forgive us?" the student asked. "My people committed terrible crimes against yours. We exiled you. We tried to destroy you. Yet now, Humans and Quarians work together. How? Lee Min-ho was quiet for a moment, thinking. Finally, he spoke. We learned something in the nebula. Something about what it means to be human, but also what it means to be a thinking being anywhere in the universe. We learned that survival requires not just strength or intelligence, but the choice to be better than those who wronged us. He stood slowly, looking out the window at the bustling station beyond. Ships of a dozen species moved through space in harmony. Your Empress chose cruelty and lies. We could have chosen the same. We could have emerged from the nebula seeking revenge, wanting to hurt those who hurt us. But that would have made us exactly what the Quarians falsely claimed we were: monsters. He turned back to the student. Instead, we chose truth. We chose justice. We chose mercy when we could have chosen slaughter. That is what makes us human. Not our technology, not our resilience, but our choice to build rather than destroy, to forgive rather than hate, to reach out rather than strike down. The young Quarian had tears in her eyes. I am so sorry for what my people did. I know, Lee Min-ho said gently. And your generation is building something better. That is all any of us can do. Learn from the past, but not be trapped by it. Build a future where exile and genocide are impossible because we stand together. The student nodded and left, her head full of new thoughts. Lee Min-ho returned to his work. Outside, the galaxy turned. Humans and aliens worked side by side. The age of exile was over. The age of unity had begun, and humanity, forgotten and exiled, had not just survived. They had shown the galaxy what forgiveness and determination could achieve. They had built an empire not of conquest, but of hope. That was the greatest victory of all. Admiral Park Ji-woo stood in the massive chamber of the Galactic Council and felt small. The room stretched upward for what seemed like miles. Hundreds of alien species filled the curved seating areas, looking down at the two humans standing in the center. The air smelled strange, like metal and flowers mixed together. Beside Park stood Ambassador Kim Min-seo. She wore her formal diplomatic robes and kept her face calm. But Park knew her well enough to see the tension in her shoulders. Something was wrong about this meeting. The council had called it an emergency session. They said it was important. Park and Kim had traveled 3 weeks through space to get here. They thought maybe the council wanted to discuss trade routes or technology sharing. Humanity had only joined the Galactic Council 3 months ago. Everyone was still learning how to work together. Park had been wrong before, but never this wrong. The hierarch Velthos rose from his seat high above them. He was Zarathi, a species that looked like giant praying mantises covered in blue and gold armor. His species had been part of the council for over 10,000 years. He moved his head to look down at the humans with eyes that had no warmth in them. The council recognizes the human delegation, Velthos said. His voice echoed through the chamber. You stand before us to answer for your violations. Kim stepped forward. Violations? Hierarch. We were not informed of any issues. What violations are you referring to? A sound rippled through the chamber. It took Park a moment to realize the aliens were laughing. Velthos touched a control panel. The air above Park and Kim shimmered. A holographic display appeared, showing images of Earth and the 7 human colony worlds. Red dots surrounded each planet. These are observation satellites, Velthos said. We placed them around your worlds 2 months ago. For your protection, of course. We needed to monitor your activities. Park's jaw tightened. No one had asked permission for this. No one had even told humanity about these satellites. He glanced at the hologram again and noticed something. The red dots were not in normal observation positions. They were in weapons range. These satellites have shown us disturbing developments, Velthos continued. He pulled up more images. They showed human shipyards, factories, and research facilities. You are building weapons. Large weapons. Weapons that violate the Council's Peaceful Development Act. Kim shook her head. Those are mining ships and defensive platforms. We have hostile wildlife on 3 of our colonies. The platforms protect our settlements. You lie. Velthos said it simply, like he was stating a fact. We have evidence of your military buildup. The Council has analyzed your actions and found them threatening to galactic peace. Park felt his anger rising but pushed it down. Getting emotional would not help. May we see this evidence? Velthos waved a clawed hand. More holograms appeared. They showed human ships with weapons. They showed factories producing ammunition. They showed test fires of defensive guns. Everything was taken out of context. The ships were mining vessels with basic protection against space debris and pirates. The factories produced ammunition for hunting and wildlife control. The test fires were standard safety procedures, but the way Velthos presented it made humanity look like it was preparing for war. This is ridiculous, Park said. Those images are misleading. Each of those activities has a peaceful purpose. We can provide full documentation. And silence. Velthos's voice cracked like a whip. The Council has made its decision. We did not bring you here to debate. We brought you here to inform you of your new reality. Kim's face went pale. What decision? Another council member stood. This one was a Florian, a species that looked like walking plants. The council votes on the human question. All in favor of protective sanctions? Hundreds of alien hands, tentacles, and appendages rose into the air. All opposed? Maybe 10 limbs stayed raised. The rest lowered in silence. The motion passes, the Florian announced. Velthos looked down at the humans, with what might have been satisfaction. Effective immediately. Humanity is placed under protective sanctions. You will halt all expansion activities. You will surrender all military vessels to Council custody. You will allow Council supervisors to oversee your governments. This is for the good of the galaxy. Park felt like he had been punched in the stomach. You cannot be serious. We are completely serious, Velthos said. You have 30 days to comply. If you refuse, the Council will take pacification measures. We will protect the galaxy from your aggression, whether you cooperate or not. Kim found her voice. This is outrageous. We have done nothing wrong. We have followed every Council regulation. We have been peaceful neighbors. You are primitives who stumbled into space barely 200 years ago, Velthos said. The chamber filled with that laughing sound again. You think you understand galactic politics? You think you have rights? You exist because we allow it. You have freedom because we grant it. And now we are taking it back. Before you become a real threat. Park stepped forward. His voice was quiet, but it carried through the chamber. Hierarch, I strongly advise you to reconsider this action. You advise me? Velthos leaned forward. You dare to give me advice? Human, I have served on this council since before your species invented the wheel. You will do as you are told. I am trying to help you avoid a terrible mistake, Park said. His voice was still calm, but there was steel underneath. Humanity does not respond well to ultimatums. The entire chamber erupted in laughter. It echoed off the walls and ceiling. Some aliens were slapping their seating areas with appendages. Others made sounds that Park's translator could not even process. Velthos wiped at his eyes with a foreleg. You threaten us? You? With your 7 primitive worlds and your small fleet of mining ships? The Council commands 3,000 worlds. Our fleets number in the millions. We have weapons that can crack planets. And you think you can frighten us? Park said nothing. He just looked up at Velthos and waited for the laughter to die down. When the chamber finally grew quiet, Velthos spoke again. You have 30 days. Comply or face the consequences. This session is concluded. The hologram disappeared. Guards appeared at the chamber doors to escort Park and Kim out. As they walked through the corridors back to their ship, Kim was shaking. What are we going to do? Park did not answer right away. He was thinking. He was remembering history lessons about what happened when powerful nations tried to push humanity around. It never ended well for the powerful nations. "We are going to go home," Park finally said. "We are going to tell the government what happened. And then, we are going to prepare." "Prepare for what?" Park stopped walking and looked at Kim. "They think we are weak. They think we will just roll over and accept this. They do not know us. At all. Park. They have millions of ships. Thousands of worlds. Technology. We barely understand. They also have arrogance," Park said. "They think numbers and technology are everything. They have never fought someone with nothing to lose." He started walking again. "Come on. We have a long trip home. And a lot of work to do." Behind them, in the council chamber, Velthos was already planning how to divide up the human worlds among council members. He never considered that the humans might actually fight back. It was the biggest mistake of his very long life. 15 days had passed since the tribunal. The United Earth government had been in almost constant session, and the arguments were getting louder. President Choi Yun-soo sat at the head of the table and listened to her advisors shout at each other. Half of them wanted to comply with the council's demands. The other half wanted to fight. Nobody seemed to have a middle option. "We cannot win a war against the entire Galactic Council," Defense Minister Jackson said. He was a tall man from the American sector, and he looked exhausted. "Their fleet is 200 times the size of ours. Their weapons are more advanced. This is suicide." "And what is compliance?" Admiral Park asked. He had returned from the council chambers with a fire in his eyes that had not gone away. "They want to take our ships. They want to put supervisors on our worlds. Supervisors who will tell us how to live, what to build, where to go." "It is surviving," Jackson replied. "We can comply now, and work to change their minds later. Diplomacy takes time." Ambassador Kim shook her head. She looked like she had not slept in days. "I have been trying diplomacy for 15 days. I have contacted every moderate council member I can find. Most will not even respond to my messages. The few who do say the same thing. Humanity must learn its place. Then we teach them a lesson," Park said. President Choi held up her hand for silence. "What lesson, Admiral? How do we fight an enemy with thousands of worlds?" Park stood and activated a hologram display. It showed the Council's fleet positions and their observation satellites around human worlds. "We fight smart. We use every advantage we have. And we make them pay for every inch. End quote. We have reason 40. We fight 40. We have critting and doxed. End quote. We have plenty. End quote. Before anyone could respond, an urgent message came through. It was from New Busan, one of the human colony worlds. The face that appeared on the screen was young, maybe 17 years old. She had blood on her face and tears in her eyes. "This is Lee Hana, on New Busan. The council inspection teams are here. They have armed soldiers with them. They are not inspecting anything. They are taking whatever they want." The connection was shaky, but they could see chaos behind her. Buildings burning. People running. The sound of weapons fire. "My father told them they could not take our mining equipment," Hana continued. Her voice was breaking. "We need it to survive. The winter is coming. And without the heat generators from the mines, people will freeze." They did not care. When my father refused to hand over the equipment, they beat him. They broke his legs. They said this is what happens to humans who do not obey. President Choi leaned forward. "Hana, where are you now? Are you safe?" "I am hiding in the communication center. But I can see what is happening outside. They are breaking into homes. They are taking food, medicine, everything. They say it is all illegal because we did not get council permission to have it." Hana wiped at her eyes. "Please. We need help." The connection cut out. The room was silent. President Choi looked at each person around the table. She saw the answer in their faces before anyone spoke. "Get me reports from all the colonies," she said quietly. "I want to know if this is happening everywhere." It was. Over the next 6 hours, reports came in from all 7 human colony worlds. Council inspection teams had arrived with armed escorts. They were not acting like inspectors. They were acting like an occupying army. On New Sol, Council soldiers had taken over the main hospital and removed all human staff. They said humans were not qualified to practice medicine without Council oversight. On Novo Hanguk, they had shut down the schools and arrested the teachers. Education had to follow Council standards now. On Terra Nova, they had seized the agricultural centers. All food production would now be managed by Council appointees. The pattern was clear. The Council was not coming to supervise. They were coming to conquer. Admiral Park stood before the President with a datapad in his hand. "I have been digging into the Council's inspection fleets. I found something interesting. They are not just bringing supervisors, they are bringing governors. Complete administrative staffs, ready to replace our governments." Ambassador Kim looked sick. They planned this. The tribunal was not about justice. It was theater. They were always going to do this. "Why?" President Choi asked. "Why do they want our worlds? We are nothing to them. 7 planets, compared to their thousands." Park pulled up a star map. "Look at where our colonies are located. Each one is near a major Council trade route or resource field. New Busan sits right next to the richest mineral belt in this sector. New Seoul is 3 jumps from the Council's main manufacturing hub. They do not want to destroy us. They want our territory. So they invent a threat," Kim said. "They make us look dangerous. Then they swoop in to save the galaxy from the scary humans. And they take our worlds as payment for their protection." President Choi stood and walked to the window. Outside, she could see Earth turning below the orbital station. Billions of people down there. Millions more on the colonies. All counting on her to protect them. She had hoped to avoid this. She had spent her entire career working for peace. But sometimes, peace was not possible. Sometimes, the only way to protect what you loved was to fight for it. She turned back to face the room. "How long until the Council's deadline?" 15 days, Park said. "Can we mobilize in that time?" Park smiled. It was not a happy smile. "Madam President, we have been mobilizing since the day I got back from the Council chambers. Every civilian ship we have has been modified. Every mining platform has been converted. Every colonist who can hold a weapon has been training." President Choi raised an eyebrow. "You did all that? Without authorization?" "I did it while we were debating," Park said. "Because I knew what choice we would make. Humans do not kneel. Not to anyone." Defense Minister Jackson stood up. "If we do this, there is no going back. The Council will come at us with everything they have. Then we make sure they regret it," Park said. President Choi looked at Ambassador Kim. "Is there any chance for peace?" Kim closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, there were tears there. "I made one last appeal today. I contacted Councillor Thrain. He is a Vesper, one of the few species that has always been kind to us. I thought maybe he could help." "What did he say?" "He said he was sorry. He said he tried to speak against the sanctions, but no one would listen. The Council has made its decision. Humanity must learn its place." Kim's voice hardened. "Then he told me that if we comply, maybe in a few hundred years, we can apply for limited autonomy." "Maybe." President Choi nodded slowly. She had her answer. "Admiral Park, you have full authorization to proceed with your plans. Prepare our forces. When the Council comes to take our freedom, we will show them what it costs to threaten humanity." Park saluted. "Yes, Madam President." As the meeting broke up and people rushed to their duties, Kim stopped beside Park. Park looked at the star map still glowing on the display. 7 small human worlds against 3,000 council planets. It should have been impossible. I think they have made a mistake, Park said. They think we are weak because we want peace. They think we will surrender because we are outnumbered. They are about to learn something very important about humanity. What is that? We are at our most dangerous when we have nothing left to lose. The council's deadline arrived at midnight, Earth Standard Time. In the council chambers, Hierarch Velthos watched the countdown with satisfaction. Around him, other council leaders gathered to witness humanity's surrender. They had gambling pools going about how long it would take the humans to give up their ships. 5 seconds, someone announced. The chamber grew quiet. Every screen showed different human worlds. They expected to see human ships powering down, weapons being handed over, white flags being raised. The countdown hit 0. Nothing happened. Velthos frowned. He touched his communication panel. Status report. The response came from Admiral Kresh, a Vorian who commanded the Council's primary enforcement fleet. His species looked like armored bears standing upright. Negative, Hierarch. No human ships have powered down. No weapons have been surrendered. They are not responding to our hails. Then activate the observation satellites, Velthos ordered. Fire warning shots at their infrastructure. Nothing vital. Just enough to make them understand we are serious. On screens throughout the chamber, the red dots around human worlds began to glow. The satellites were powering up. In 30 seconds, they would fire on human cities and show humanity the price of defiance. 20 seconds. On New Busan, Lihana stood with her neighbors and watched the sky. Everyone knew the satellites were up there. Everyone knew what was about to happen, but nobody ran. They had decided if this was the end, they would face it standing. 10 seconds. In Earth orbit, Admiral Park sat in the command chair of the UES Indomitable. His entire fleet surrounded him, invisible to Council sensors. They had been using stealth technology borrowed from mining operations, technology the Council did not know humans had. All ships. On my mark, Park said quietly. 5 seconds. The Council satellites aimed at human cities. Weapons charged. Targeting systems locked. 0. Park smiled. Mark. Throughout the galaxy, in 47 different star systems, the trap was sprung. Every civilian ship that had been moving through Council space suddenly dropped its disguise. Mining vessels revealed weapon batteries. Transport ships deployed fighters. Cargo haulers opened their holds and released clouds of combat drones. The Council had been so busy watching human worlds that they never thought to check their own territory. In the Council chambers, alarms started screaming. Every screen changed from showing human cities to showing Council military installations under attack. What is happening? Velthos demanded. We are under attack, someone shouted. 47 systems reporting simultaneous strikes. Our supply depots, our fuel stations, our repair facilities, they are all being hit. On the screen showing New Busan, the observation satellites suddenly exploded. Not from weapons fire. They just exploded. Park had placed small charges on each one weeks ago when he first discovered them. The Council had been so confident in their technology that they never checked for sabotage. All around the human worlds, the deadly satellites turned into expanding clouds of debris. Impossible, Velthos whispered. How did they get charges onto our satellites? On another screen, Admiral Kresh's face appeared. He looked shocked. Hierarch. The humans had people on our satellites for weeks. They have been inside our systems this entire time. They knew everything we were planning. Deploy the fleet, Velthos ordered. Crush this rebellion immediately. Kresh nodded and turned away. His fleet was massive. Over 10,000 ships. Against maybe 300 human vessels. It should have been a quick fight. It was quick. Just not in the way Kresh expected. The Battle of New Busan lasted 6 hours. Kresh's fleet came in with standard Council tactics. They formed a battle line, powered up their shields, and prepared for an honorable engagement. The humans did not fight honorably. Mining ships loaded with explosives rammed council vessels. Small fighters darted in too close for big ships to shoot and cut into hulls with mining lasers. Drones swarmed like insects, attaching to shields and overloading them. And when council ships tried to retreat, they found human ships behind them. The humans had used the asteroid field. They had hidden ships in the rocks, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Lihanna watched from the ground as council ships burned in the sky above her world. She felt no joy in it. Just a grim satisfaction that her people were not going down without a fight. On the UES Indomitable, Park watched the battle displays with cold focus. Target, their command ship. All batteries. Fire. The Indomitable was not a warship. 3 months ago, it had been a colony transport, but its hull was thick to protect colonists from radiation. Its engines were powerful to carry heavy loads, and now it had weapons taken from every human military stockpile in the sector. The Council's command ship took hit after hit. Its shields failed. Its armor cracked. And when human marines breached the hull and poured inside, Kresh finally understood what was happening. He was not fighting a minor rebellion. He was fighting a species that refused to lose. The Marines fought deck by deck through the Council ship. They did not take prisoners. They did not stop to negotiate. They just moved forward like a wave, unstoppable and relentless. Kresh tried to reach Velthos, to warn him, but the communication was jammed. The last thing he saw before the Marines reached his bridge was Earth on his view screen, looking small and blue and completely terrifying. While the Battle of New Busan raged, human forces hit targets across Council space. At the Zarathi supply depot in the Margolis system, Captain Yoon Sera led a boarding team that captured the entire facility in under an hour. What they found in the computers made her blood run cold. "Admiral, you need to see this," she transmitted to Park. The files showed months of planning. The Council had been preparing to seize human worlds long before the tribunal. They had drawn up maps dividing human territory. They had written laws to make humans second-class citizens. They had planned everything. The tribunal had been a show, a way to make their invasion look legal. Park forwarded the files to every council member, every news network, every species in the galaxy. Let them see what their leaders had done. Let them see who the real aggressors were. In the council chambers, Velthos watched his perfect plan fall apart. The other council members were shouting at him now, demanding to know why he had not told them about the invasion plans. "It was necessary," Velthos insisted. "The humans are dangerous. We had to act." "You lied to us," Councillor Thrain said. The Vesper looked furious. "You manipulated us into approving a war of conquest. You used our fear to justify theft. I did what was needed for galactic security. You did what was needed for Xerathi expansion," Thrain shot back. "Those human worlds are near our territory, not yours. You wanted their resources for your species." Before Velthos could respond, another alarm sounded. This one was different. This one meant something very bad was happening. "Dax Prime is under attack," someone reported. The entire chamber went silent. Dax Prime was a fortress world. It had shields that could withstand planetary bombardment. It had weapons that could destroy entire fleets. It was supposed to be invincible. The humans attacked it anyway. They did not try to break the shields. Instead, they landed troops on the surface in small ships that were too fast to track. The troops fought their way inside through maintenance tunnels and service hatches, and once inside, they did something the Council had never seen before. They vented the atmosphere, section by section. The humans opened the fortress to space. Council defenders had to choose between fighting or getting to safety. Most chose safety. The ones who chose to fight found themselves facing enemies who did not care about their own survival. Human soldiers fought in vacuum. They fought in zero gravity. They fought in the dark, when the humans cut the power. They fought like every battle was their last, because they knew it might be. Dax Prime fell in 18 hours. When Velthos saw the fortress world's shields go dark, he finally understood. The humans were not trying to win battles. They were trying to send a message. The message was clear. Nothing you have is safe. Nowhere you hide is secure. If you threaten our families, we will burn your entire civilization to the ground. Admiral Park stood on the bridge of the Indomitable and watched reports come in from across the galaxy. 47 systems secured. Council forces in retreat. Human casualties were high, but every objective had been met. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission," his communication officer reported. "It is from the Council. They want to negotiate." Park smiled. It was not a kind smile. "Tell them we will consider negotiations after they withdraw all forces from human territory, after they release all prisoners, after they stand down their weapons platforms. And if they refuse?" Park looked at the star map, showing Council territory. So many worlds, so many targets. "Then we keep going," he said, "until they understand that threatening humanity was the worst mistake they ever made." 3 weeks into the war, the Galactic Council was fracturing. The species that made up the Council had joined together for protection and prosperity. But they had never expected to face an enemy like humanity. An enemy that did not care about rules or conventions. An enemy that fought like cornered animals. In the Tertian sector, human forces broadcast evidence of the Council's invasion plans on every frequency. They showed the maps dividing human territory. They showed the orders to replace human governments. They showed everything. The effect was immediate. Dozens of Council species began questioning their leadership. If the Council had lied about humanity, what else had they lied about? Some colonies started to rebel. Not all of them, but enough to make the Council nervous. Councillor Thrain watched it all from his chambers and felt sick. He had tried to stop this. He had warned them that pushing humanity was dangerous. Nobody had listened. Now the galaxy was burning, and he could not see how to put out the fire. Admiral Park stood in the war room aboard the Indomitable and studied the strategic map. His staff surrounded him, tired but determined. They had won every battle so far, but Park knew better than to celebrate. "The Council's main fleet is gathering at the Nexus," his intelligence officer reported. Estimates put their numbers at over 50,000 ships. 50,000 against humanity's remaining force of maybe 2,000. The Council was bringing everything they had. "How long until they are ready to move?" Park asked. 72 hours, maybe less." Park nodded slowly. This was the decisive moment. If humanity could break the Council's main fleet, the war would end. If they failed, Earth and all the colonies would fall. "Prepare the fleet," he said. "We move to intercept in 24 hours. Captain Yoon Sarah approached him after the briefing ended. "Sir, the numbers are not good. Even with everything we have, we cannot match that kind of firepower." "We do not need to match it," Park said. Sarah looked at him for a long moment. "You have a plan." "I always have a plan." The Nexus was a strategic point where 3 major trade routes met. Controlling it meant controlling access to a third of Council space. The Council had chosen it because they wanted to make a statement. They wanted to crush humanity in a place everyone could see. Park was happy to give them their big battle. Just not the one they expected. The human fleet arrived first. Park positioned his ships in a defensive formation and waited. He made it look like humanity was preparing for a last stand. Desperate defenders, waiting for the inevitable. The Council fleet came out of hyperspace in perfect formation, 50,000 ships, gleaming and powerful. At their head was the CNS Eternal Glory, Hierarch Velthos's personal flagship. Velthos had demanded to lead this battle personally. He wanted to be there when humanity was crushed. He wanted to see their ships burn. Admiral Kresh, who had survived the Battle of New Busan, tried to warn him. "Hierarch, the humans are tricky. They do not fight like we expect. We should be careful. Careful? Velthos laughed. Look at them. 2,000 ships against 50,000. They are finished. This ends now. The Council fleet advanced in textbook formation, shields up, weapons charged, moving like a wall of steel and energy. Park watched them come and smiled. All ships. Begin retreat. Make it look panicked. The human ships turned and ran. Not in formation. Not in an orderly withdrawal. They scattered like frightened birds. Each ship going a different direction. Velthos saw it and felt triumph surge through him. They are breaking. All ships. Pursue. Do not let any escape. Kresh felt his stomach drop. Hierarch. This could be a trap. It is a rout, Velthos insisted. Chase them down. The Council fleet broke formation to pursue. 50,000 ships spreading out across the system, each one chasing a fleeing human vessel. Park counted down in his head. 10 seconds. 9. 8. The human ships led their pursuers deeper into the system, deeper into the asteroid field, deeper into the trap. 3. 2. 1. Now, Park said quietly. Hidden throughout the asteroid field, thousands of weapons platforms activated. They had been there for days, placed by human engineers, working in secret. Magnetic mines, missile batteries, plasma cannons, everything humanity could build or steal. The Council ships flew right into the kill zone. The asteroids themselves exploded, having been hollowed out and filled with explosives weeks ago. Entire sections of the Council fleet vanished in fire and debris, and then the human ships stopped running. They turned. They accelerated back toward their pursuers. And behind them came reinforcements. Ships from every human colony. Civilian vessels modified for combat. Fighters launched from hidden carriers. The Council fleet suddenly realized they were not the hunters. They were the prey. All ships, reform! Reform the battle line! Velthos screamed into his communicator, but it was too late. The Council ships were spread out across the system, isolated and vulnerable. The humans hit them in groups, overwhelming individual vessels before moving to the next target. Captain Sarah led a boarding team onto a Council cruiser. They fought through the corridors with a ferocity that terrified the defenders. When the Council crew tried to surrender, Sarah had to stop her Marines from killing them anyway. We are not like them, she told her troops. We fight hard, but we do not murder prisoners. The Marines listened. They secured the prisoners and moved on to the next ship. Lihana was there too. The girl from New Busan had joined the resistance fighters after her colony was attacked. Now she piloted a fighter through the chaos of battle, her movements precise and cold. She shot down 3 Council fighters and damaged a frigate before her craft took a hit. As she ejected, she saw a Council escape pod nearby. Inside were young Zarathi. Maybe her age, maybe younger. She could have left them, let them drift until their air ran out. It would have been justice for what they did to her father. Instead, she activated her emergency beacon and marked their location for rescue. Then she transmitted to them directly. Stay calm. Help is coming. We are not monsters. The young Zarathi did not respond. But Hana knew they heard her. Let them go home and tell their families that a human saved them. Let them wonder why. On the Eternal Glory, Velthos watched his fleet die. Ship after ship went dark on his displays. Thousands of vessels destroyed or captured. His perfect formation shattered. His overwhelming advantage turned into a massacre. Hierarch, we must retreat, Kresh urged. We have lost. We need to preserve what we can. No! Velthos slammed his appendage against the console. We cannot lose to primitives. We cannot. We already have, Kresh said quietly. An explosion rocked the flagship. Human ships were targeting it now, recognizing it as the command vessel. Velthos felt fear for the first time in his long life. Hierarch, they are boarding us, someone reported. Velthos looked at his screens and saw human marines cutting through his hull. They moved with purpose, heading straight for the bridge. The bridge doors exploded inward. Human soldiers poured through, weapons ready. They secured the room in seconds, professional and efficient. Then a single human walked in. He was large for their species, scarred, and carrying a rifle that looked like it had seen many battles. His name tag read, Quan Taeyang, Sergeant. Quan looked around the bridge until his eyes found Velthos. Hierarch Velthos, you are under arrest for war crimes. You cannot arrest me, Velthos said. I am a member of the Galactic Council. I have diplomatic immunity. Quan smiled. It was not a nice smile. Your council does not exist anymore. Look, he pointed at the view screen. It showed the battle, or what was left of it. The council fleet was in ruins, burning ships, debris fields, escape pods, floating everywhere. Your fleet is destroyed, Quan said. Your government is falling apart. Member species are already pulling out of the council. You have nothing. Velthos felt his legs give out. He collapsed onto the deck. This is impossible. We are the council. We have ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. You ruled because everyone was afraid, Quan said. But you made a mistake. You attacked someone who was not afraid of you. Someone who would rather burn the galaxy than kneel. You are monsters, Velthos whispered. Quan shook his head. No. We are humans. You threatened our children. You tried to take our freedom. What did you think would happen? Before Velthos could answer, a new voice came over the communication system. It was Counselor Thrain. Admiral Park, this is Counselor Thrain. I am transmitting to all ships, Council and human. The Galactic Council is dissolved. Those of us who remain are suing for peace. Please, no more death. Park's face appeared on every screen. He looked tired. Counselor Thrain, humanity will accept peace talks, but only under our conditions. Name them, Thrain said. Complete withdrawal from all human territory. Release of all prisoners. War crimes trials for those who started this. And a new galactic order, where no species can claim authority over another. There was a long pause. Then Thrain spoke again. I accept. On behalf of what remains of the Council, I accept. Park nodded. Then the shooting stops now. All human forces, cease fire, secure prisoners, and render aid, where possible. Across the battlefield, human ships stopped firing. They began rescue operations instead, pulling survivors from damaged vessels. Velthos watched it all, and finally understood. The humans had not been fighting for conquest. They had been fighting for freedom, and now that they had it, they were showing mercy to their enemies. It made what he had done so much worse. 2 months after the Battle of the Nexus, the former council chambers looked very different. The high seats where council leaders once looked down on others were empty. In their place, a circular arrangement of equal-height tables filled the floor. Representatives from 300 species sat together, none higher than any other. Admiral Park stood at the center and looked at the faces around him. Some showed hope. Some showed fear. Some showed anger. All of them were here, because they had to be. The galaxy had changed. The old order was gone. Now they had to build something new. Ambassador Kim Min-seo stood beside him. She had spent the last 2 months in constant negotiations, trying to prevent the collapse of galactic civilization. She looked exhausted, but determined. The peace conference will now begin, she announced. We are here to establish a new framework for galactic cooperation. One based on consent, not coercion. A Florian representative stood. The humans have destroyed the council. What gives you the right to dictate terms? Park turned to face them. We do not dictate. We propose. Every species here has an equal voice. That is the whole point. But you have the military power, the Florian insisted. You could force us to agree to anything. We could, Park agreed. But we will not. We did not fight this war to become the new council. We fought for freedom. That includes your freedom. Councillor Thrain stood from his seat. He had been one of the few council members to survive with his reputation intact. I have worked with the humans for 2 months now. They mean what they say. They truly want cooperation, not domination. Then why are their fleets still deployed throughout our territory? A Zarathi representative demanded. It was not Velthos. The former hierarch was in a cell, awaiting trial. Our fleets are maintaining order while we establish the new system, Kim explained. As soon as each sector has a functional local government, we will withdraw. We have no interest in occupation. How can we trust that? Park smiled slightly. Because if we wanted your territory, we would have taken it already. We beat the entire council fleet with a fraction of their numbers. If we wanted an empire, you could not stop us. He paused. But we do not want an empire. We want partners. End. The room fell silent. Representatives looked at each other, considering his words. A small voice spoke up. It came from a Vesper representative, one of Thrain's people. What are the proposed terms? Other NO. Kim activated a holographic display. The new Galactic Charter. It is simple. No species may claim authority over another without consent. All agreements between species must be voluntary. Disputes will be resolved through arbitration, not force. And any species that violates these principles will face collective response. Who enforces these rules? Someone asked. We all do, Park said. Each species contributes to a mutual defense force. No single species controls it. If someone breaks the rules, the collective decides how to respond. And if someone breaks the rules against a weak species, one that cannot defend itself, then the rest of us defend them, Kim said firmly. That is the point of collective security. No one stands alone. A Margolin representative stood. Their species had been one of the first to defect from the council during the war. When council loyalists attacked our colonies, human ships came to our defense. They asked for nothing in return. The Margolin looked around the room. I trust them more than I ever trusted the council. More species began to speak, sharing their experiences. Some had been helped by human forces. Others had seen human mercy toward prisoners and wounded. Slowly, the mood in the room began to shift, but not everyone was convinced. This is all very noble, a Vorian admiral said, but words are easy. How do we know humanity will not change its mind in a few years? Decide that ruling the galaxy is easier than cooperating? Before Park could answer, the doors to the chamber opened. A group of humans entered, escorted by guards. They were not diplomats or military officers. They were colonists from the 7 human worlds. Lihana walked at their front. She was 18 now, no longer the frightened girl who had broadcast from New Busan. The war had aged her, but it had not broken her. She approached the center of the chamber and bowed slightly to the assembled representatives. May I speak? Kim looked surprised but nodded. Of course. Hana turned to address the room. My name is Lee Hana. I am from New Busan. When the council came to my world, they beat my father and burned our homes. They said it was for galactic security. They said we were dangerous. The room listened in silence. I hated them for that. Hana continued. I wanted revenge. When the war started, I joined the fighters. I shot down council ships. I celebrated when they died. She paused, but then I saw something. During the Battle of the Nexus, I saw council escape pods. Young people like me. Scared and alone. I could have left them to die. Instead, I called for rescue. Why? Someone asked. Because revenge is not justice, Hana said. Because killing them would not bring back what I lost. Because, if we become like the council, if we rule through fear and violence, then we did not win. We just became The new monsters. She looked around the room. The humans here, my leaders, they could take whatever they want. But they are choosing something harder. They are choosing to build instead of conquer. And I am here to tell you that this is not just political talk. This is who we are. She reached into her bag and pulled out a data pad. This contains testimony from 300 council prisoners. We asked them how they were treated while in human custody. You can read it yourselves. We gave them medical care. We fed them. We treated them with dignity. Even the ones who had hurt us. Kim took